go ahead and dive in to this, because it's not just about getting to retirement or through retirement, beyond retirement, obviously a major component, and that involves estate planning. There is a side to it called probate. And when it comes to estate planning, the word probate might as well have horns or have 4 letters to it. So let's clear up the misconceptions, perhaps. What is probate? What is potentially so terrible about it? And how do you help people avoid it?
Well, here at America's Retirement Headquarters, we have that retirement team action plan, and the team stands for, not only do we have a team in place to be able to kind of help and implement all of these areas. For example, I'm not an attorney, but we work with a couple of local professionals and have some online resources. But it stands for taxes, estate planning, asset protection, and money management. And in this segment, we're going to give you 4 ways that you can potentially avoid probate. So things that can help you out a lot. And there are going to be some easy solutions on ways that we can help you out. We had a client recently had come into the office. He's just getting ready to retire. We put together his retirement team action plan. This gentleman is not married and it does not have an estate plan in place. And by that, what I mean, he doesn't have a will, doesn't have power of attorney. But having no wife, we had talked to him a little bit about some of the potential issues that he could face, not just necessarily probate, identifying, the process of what do you want to have happen with your assets, but talking to him about, what happens if you're incapacitated, you're hurt. Somebody still needs to pay your rent payment. Somebody needs to manage your utilities, look at your investment accounts. And so we were able to walk him through some of the online services that are available, that are out there. We were able to talk to him about some of the professionals and really be able to kind of show him a customized solution. And, by the time he left here, I think he was just so much more confident knowing that he got it checked off the list. So in my opinion, everybody, doesn't matter how big of your estate is, you need to have some form of an estate plan. And when we look at the process of probate really is that legal process, when the court hands over a deceased person assets to designated beneficiaries after debts and taxes are paid. A will really is a thing that goes through that probate process. I don't know how many people you talk to, Scott, on your health insurance side, but my wife, we recently went in. She had a little bit of surgery on her knee. We have a living will, and we have a DNR, a do not resuscitate document that we've had in place, and we put that in place. Those are trying to explain and making sure that everybody knows in the event that something happens, what our wishes are. I don't know how many times did you run into people that maybe haven't done anything with their overall estate planning?
Oh, that's the norm. And sadly, it's the norm. There's so many people that sit and say, oh, that's something else we have to get off of our checklist of things to do. And then they'll ask, do you have that here? And as you know, here at America's Retirement Headquarters, we can actually help and offer all types of services. And that is one of the things that we do. We've got attorneys that we can refer you to help you establish that. But one of the things you mentioned, Nolan, that is so important is you want to make sure you get things put in place while you're capable of doing so. The worst thing that can happen, the last thing you want to happen is if you become incapacitated, you don't get to make the decisions anymore. And if you don't have somebody designated to make those decisions on your behalf, or if things aren't spelled out, you're at the mercy of the courts, the probate, right? So let me ask you this. Why is it so important to actually have a plan put in place? Because if I have a will, does the will still go through probate?
So a will goes through probate. So probate doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad process. Probate is the process that ultimately, again, goes through the court system. I think some of the challenges we'll cover, again, 4 ways to avoid probate. But some of the reasons why I think it's important to understand why it's good to have an estate plan in place, not only to try to avoid some of these fees and expenses that we're going to share with you, but ultimately having clear instructions that are out there.
Right.
I don't know, over the years, helping hundreds of families and working with retirees, I can confidently tell you that families that have a clear estate plan, that they've communicated what their wishes are to their loved ones, in those times of losing a loved one, that process tends to move a lot smoother than people who have old, outdated estate plans that have no estate plans in place, because I think there's confusion. I'm a perfect example. My dad got remarried on his second marriage, and unfortunately, just a couple of years into that marriage, at the age of 49, my dad had a heart attack and passed away. As a young kid at that time, I think I really struggled with, was that really the wishes Dad would have wanted? Because at 49, I don't really think that he or anybody had thought at 49,
Right.
that something bad was going to happen. But we don't know when anything's going to happen. So, at any age, when you start to have assets, you want to have your estate plans put in place. You also want to think about updating your estate plans as things get older. Last week, I met with my estate planning attorney. I got my estate plans updated because when I last did it, my kids were little. And at that point, my kids weren't Boy Scouts, they weren't Eagle Scouts, they weren't graduates, they weren't in a spot where I feel that they're more responsible. So it was important for me to make sure that now they're a little bit older, people understand, what and how to manage the assets, God forbid, something happens. When we look at it, the probate process, it can be costly. I don't know if you've ran into people over the years or even if you experienced it, when you lost your dad, but, the cost and the time delay, you get these bills from either the court system, attorneys, they can add up to be kind of a pretty big expense. And that's why I think avoiding probate's an important part for people that want to try to minimize that as well.
Yeah, I think the time delay is one of the bigger things, and the unknowns are the fees. A lot of people have no idea what the fees actually are involved, and they vary by state. I know that in California you can expect to pay probate costs of 4 to 7% in estate of the estate's value in fees alone. A lot of people don't have any idea. I will tell you this. I did not know that. The good thing for when Dad passed away was things were transferred over to Mom, and we were able to put things in place for her. And now we're pretty well set for when that unfortunate time happens. Mom actually turned 87 here a couple of weekends ago, and she's doing fantastic. But they're still at 87 years old. You just don't know. So the delay in getting things settled, because bills come in, whether you have the money or not, the bills are still going to be coming in. And, I think those are a couple of things that a lot of people aren't familiar with.
Well, you mentioned the word costly, and you talked about the actual cost of the probate to the court system. But again, now you add on top of that, you add in things like fees and expenses. I can think of an example where other things that come into play can be a bigger issue as well. I have one of our radio show listeners. She had come in quite a few years ago, so this is a flashback in the past. And she came up to the office because her mom had ended up in a nursing home. And so she was the only child. Her dad had already passed away. And she started to get this financial inventory put together because she knew with Mom's health condition it wasn't going to go very good, and noticed that she didn't really have her estate plans put in place. In fact, one of the things that she didn't have in place was a named beneficiary on her 401k plan.
Wow.
And so when Mom passed away, that 401k plan, not only did you have the probate expenses, not only did you have the attorney fees, you had the fact that income taxes weren't paid on those retirement accounts. And by not having a properly named beneficiary, it created a blow up. I can think of another example of a client who works with us. And, that particular client, we worked with his dad and we had plans in place. And, ultimately we're able to help take and transition that account, make it more of a multi-generational retirement account.
Sure.
So he didn't have all those taxes blow up at once. So not only can it be less costly by planning ahead, it can also save fees and expenses. So here are 4 ways that can help you avoid probate. Number 1 is you want to look at having named beneficiaries. And when you're thinking about named beneficiaries, you're thinking about your 401k, your individual retirement account, your life insurance policy, your annuities, things that you can name a beneficiary. It's important to have a primary and a contingent beneficiary in place. There's other cases, like in Mom's situation, where there's different type of titling that you can have done
Sure.
on either investment accounts or deeds. So those are called transfer on death, and I don't know if you've looked into any of those type of options.
We have that in place, actually.
So number 2 is a transfer on death registration. Those are things that are titled assets. It can be for somebody that has a house. It could be, for somebody who has an investment account. Having a named beneficiary or a transfer on death registration could be another way to avoid probate. Number three is you can create what is a living trust. So I, as an example, I have a living trust. That was the one I was talking about that can, help with my children. God forbid something happens to my wife and I at the same time. But the other thing I like about a trust is it keeps my information private.
Sure.
I don't know if you know this or not, but a will's public information. You could go on the internet right now and you could type in Elvis Presley's will or Marilyn Monroe's will. And Scott, if you have some free time to do that, I'd encourage you to do that because it's pretty fun reading some of the wills of some of the famous celebrities that are out there.
To try to get into their mindset at the time, it's when they were creating the will. What were they thinking about, right? Because when you read some of these things, I bet there's some pretty crazy stuff out there.
It is crazy stuff, but I think, for most of us average everyday folks, we don't want our information private. And so probate, becomes a public process. Creating a living trust can be a way to avoid probate and a way to keep your information private. Number 4 is if you are a small business owner, don't forget about your business can be one of the biggest assets that you own, and there most likely is a tremendous amount of value in what your business has, even after you pass away, as long as you have the proper operating agreements and succession plan in place for your business, another way to avoid probate. So the bottom line here is there's 4 ways to avoid probate. If you have an estate plan that is outdated, you need to get it in place, or need to just have it reviewed to say what's available. It's exactly what we can do as part of that retirement team action plan. And Chris, what's great about that is when you come into the office or one of the first 5 callers that has more than $250,000 saved for retirement time comes into the office, that meeting's going to be complimentary. So whether we're going through that ultimate estate planning checklist or providing them that retirement team action plan, they're then going to be able to get a second set of eyes that can give them some advice on what maybe they can do to get their estate plans updated to avoid probate. And then if and when we need to pull in an attorney and or provide recommendations on how to get things done, that's the team approach that we do here at America's Retirement Headquarters.
As they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and preparing for, estate planning and the ultimate estate planning checklist can prevent a lot of headaches and heartaches down the line. So give a call and set up a time to speak with the team at America's Retirement Headquarters, 419-794-3030. That's 419-794-3030. You can also find out more about them and set up a time on the website. That is, of course, arhq.com.